everyone, welcome back to another video of CambiHub, and in today's video we'll be talking about how do you test for reliable sources. So in the previous video series in the playlist for IGCSE Global Perspectives, we talked about how you can search for a source, how you can search for relevant links, how you can find links, how you can use scholarly websites. Today we'll talk about how would you test if that source is credible or not. So you'll find this technique which is used by almost all of the IGCSE Global Perspective teachers, and you must have seen this in your school also, right? Your teacher might must also use this method, which is CRRAB method, right? CRRAB. So CRRAB stands for check information, relevant content, reliable reputation, authoritative expertise, accurate and clear information. So if you want, you can pause the video and read it. I'll just go through, I go over it and explain what it is. So C stands for current information. So this basically talks about if the information is the latest, right? If it is, if it is current or not, if it is based on your source or not, right? It is not very old. It is based on the current trends and checking its currency. What do we mean by currency is checking its date and time, right? So it should be according to the latest trends. It should not be very, very old, because if it is very old, it won't be adjusted according to the new trends, right? And what we want is most accurate data, which is, adjusted according to the current trends. Then the relevance of it, right? The content should be relevant, right? Whatever is your scope, or whatever is your research question, or whatever you are trying to search is relevant to your search, right? The source is relevant to your search, right? That's what you have to do. If it is not relevant, if it goes off topic, then that is a warning sign that you should not use this source and refer to other sources. Then again, it should have a reliable reputation, right? It should not be like xyz123.com, right? It should not be a website like that. It should always be from, a reputed website, for example, the UN or the UNESCO or the WHO, or it should also be from any source which is really, credible, or which is renowned, which is famous, right? It should have authoritative expertise. You should check the source's author. The author should be, should have, you should check their expertise. That author should also be renowned. Their author should also be credible. It should not be a random XYZ person writing that report. That does not makes it, I mean, that adds some amount of uncertainty to it, right? It should be accurate and clear, right? It should be very to the point. It should be very narrowed down. It should be very clear with whatever it wants to say. It should not, mix up things and put it in the air and give you a jumbled, or leave you in a confused state. It should be straight to the point, right? It should be balanced. It should not be biased. It should not have a vested interest, right? So some knowledge of paper one, right, where we have to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the sources. Some knowledge of paper one will also be required here, right, to check your source. Now, this is a proper checklist to check if the source that you have taken is credible or not. So, you need to check if the arguments are supported by evidence. Each and every argument should be supported by evidence. You should not take any argument that does not have an evidence. Either they don't have it, right, evidence for that, or someone's opinion who has written that information. So you need to check that, right? Have you heard of the author or the organization? A really important check mark. Does the source look real? Right? It should not be a fake author or a fake link. So do check that also. Is there evidence to support the argument strong? I mean, the evidence, obviously, there must be evidence to support the argument. Otherwise, the link would not have been, very there in the search. However, if it is there, is it supporting the argument strong, or it is like random citation, right? That they could also do that, right? Is the author a real person? Does the date seem normal? 2032 hasn't arrived yet. Right? Is the source free of bias? Again, we talked about this. Is the language okay? Spelling, grammar, tone. Tone should be confident, not emotive. Tone should be clear, not exaggerated. All of these things, right? Spelling and grammar. If there are basic grammar mistakes and they're publishing on their website, then obviously that's an alarm, right? That's alarming, right? That's not something that should happen, right? For a reputed source. Is the stories, arguments presented in a coherent and a logical way? Is there a chronological order of presenting it? Is there some logic to it? Right? It should not be in the air. It should be proper. Every part of the paper, your data should be justified. Right? So possible strengths that you could find. could be that the stance is firmly established and argued, and the argument is well structured. It uses an emotive tone, however, it is not an emotion. It does not have an emotional appeal. So there is a difference. If it's sounding very, if it's sounding very bad and making you feel pity, might have an emotional appeal. Whereas it can be emotive, right? It can do a lot of emotions and it can make it very using the emotions it can prove it, right? Prove itself. Argument is logical and shows clarity, makes use of personal testimony. There should be some right experience mentioned there. Some author, some person should talk their opinion in between, right? Some expert should give an advice. So a personal testimony should be there. There should be impressive range of relevant information, makes use of reputed sources, right? Counter argument should be there. It should not be one sided only. It should answer all of the counter arguments, and it should support the claim with the clear evidence. Possible weaknesses or alarming things that could be there would be stances firmly established and argue, but the argument is not well structured. There's an exaggerated tone, right? It is too much to that thing. It is pretty exaggerated, right? It is not logical. Too anecdotal and based solely on personal experiences. Some amount of facts should be there, right? It should not only be based on somebody's opinion purely, right? It is too narrowed or it has a limited range, right? It should be narrowed, it should be specific focus, but it should not be very limited, right? It should be balanced. If it is not balanced, then that is alarming. And all of these things. Now, what could be the possible sources of bias? Number one, it could show a local interest. For example, if you're referring to a document published by the state government or district or the municipal corporation, they can be a bit biased towards that, towards their own party or their own work, right? If you are referring to economic bias can also be there, personal bias can also be there, experience bias can also be there, and community's influence on parent, or like parents influence the main author of it, right? The main parent or the main uh, person who has written it, right? The authority could also be biased. So these are the few things that you should check, right? And this is how you can check for reliable sources. This is Pranay signing off from CambiHub. I'll meet you in the next Global Perspective lecture. Do not forget to visit our WhatsApp community. The link will be there in the description. You can also visit our learning portal, which has interactive resources like past papers and worksheets. You can visit it at www.cambihub.com. Obviously, you can ask your doubts in the comments. If you want to mail me your doubts, you can mail me at pranay@cambihub.com. Thank you, everyone.